Hello, everybody. This is Austin Carr, your host of the Greenlink Podcast. Thank you for joining us today. We have a very special guest, Mr. Chandler Anderson. He's the Vice President of Greenlink Energy Solutions. Chandler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. My first podcast ever.
That's great. Yeah, this is my third or fourth, so not far off from you there. So we're talking all things Greenlink, energy efficiency, renewable energy. Obviously, you and I both know we've got lots of exciting projects and different things in the pipeline. And let's chat a little bit about some of those things. Just riff on the things that we're talking about all day long.
Yeah. Where do you want to begin? Do you want to do a little Greenlink history, or have you done that yet in your other podcasts?
We've touched on it, but okay. I think it's reasonable to touch on it again from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for posterity, I wouldn't mind this story being known about how we met and how.
I like that.
You want to roll from there?
Yeah. Why don't you tell us?
So a friend of mine who I like a lot, a guy named Bill, he said that you and I should connect because I was in energy and you just started in energy.
That's right.
And I transitioned from real estate into energy, or was moving that way because it was brutal in real estate. And I was renovating a house at the time, and you came over, right, Gilbert High School.
That's right.
You came over and you were going to do a blower door test, and I was just learning about it because I knew I wanted it to be efficient, and we'd spray foam the roof. And,
I remember that.
And the vaulted ceiling and all that kind of stuff.
I was disappointed when I got there and heard it was spray foamed already. By the way,
because you wanted to do it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't have a rig at the time.
I did not, but we find a way.
You find a way. Metro did it.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was fine because they had done a bunch of work for us at Garrison.
Sure.
Anyway, so my memory is that you came in, we did the blower door, you looked around, and we just hit it off right away as friends and just started just talking immediately and blah, blah, blah,
That's right.
And just for those who are listening, which I guess to be about a total of 10 or 15.
That's probably right. Yeah, exactly. Maybe on the high side.
I am 20 years older than Austin. So anyways, almost exactly 20 years older than Austin. And right away, we hit it off. And I started asking you questions about your business. And you said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't thought of that. I'm like, okay. And anyway, so that led to us becoming, friends. Yeah. And my whole thing was, let's have an old man help a young man not make those young man mistakes. Certainly like I did.
Yeah.
And it was largely around you having good books.
That's right. I remember that specifically talking about the QuickBooks, and you asked me something about the balance sheet or something like this. I'm like, balance sheet? I don't know. What's that?
Yeah. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then you leased the space on Forest View Road.
That's right. Yep.
Business started going good. We stayed in contact.
Yeah.
I went over there with you. We looked at it.
Yeah.
I remember the rent being not very much, but we were both like, oh,
right.
It's a big deal.
Yeah,
because you were working out of your truck at the time.
That's right. Yeah, the garage and the truck. Yep.
Yeah. So you got that space, and that must have been when? And so this is 2024. That must have been in 2016, maybe.
Yeah, I maybe even earlier in 2015.
Yeah.
So I got some photos of my kids. They were babies walking around that shop, and they're 9 and 11. So.
Yeah. Okay. So we got the shop. That was the first, and now we've got three more, three units over there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I came to, between other jobs, I would come work with you periodically here and there. Yeah. You needed some help. We're doing some remodels in the suburbs, and so I would go do those for you. And then I did the wind farm project, which was great.
Yep.
So where I met Kaylee.
Exactly.
And when that was over, which was real exciting and fun and successful, it was great. You said, hey, let's start a solar division. And I came back from that, and there we go.
That story about getting into the solar. I remember we were sitting at, I think, Chalongo's for lunch. Yeah. We're talking about the solar and Greenlink Energy Solutions and the business model. And, one of our competitors, the story, I bumped into him at the home show, and he's like, oh, are you thinking about getting into solar? I was like, yeah, I'm kicking it around. He said, well, I'll warn you, be very careful. It's a very, very difficult business. I'm like, okay, sure, Chandler, we got to get into solar.
And I remember being just as enthusiastic as you, I think.
Yeah, that's right. He wasn't joking, though.
No, he was not.
There's a term in the solar industry, for the folks that don't know, called the solar coaster, and that is a very, very real thing.
Yes.
It is a wild ride.
We take a ride on the solar coaster every single day.
Every day, all day.
Yeah,
There's no doubt about that.
But it's cool.
Yeah.
And, and that's part of what we should riff on, too, is because solar is very cool. The technology is awesome. It's beautiful. And the main thing is it works. It really, truly, actually works.
Yep.
Would you want to talk about Kyle's first?
Yeah.
Our first 360 project. Have you talked about 360 yet?
Yeah, we've touched on it, but we haven't talked about Kyle's project as our first customer in
solar.
In solar. That's right. And our first 360 too, where we did a number of different projects there. When we talk about 360, that's our term for a holistic energy approach. So we're looking at not only solar and creating energy, but energy efficiency.
That's really last, right? We're looking at the other things.
That's right. Yeah. We want to make that home, as Chandler says, sip energy, uses as minimal amount as possible.
Turn it into a Yeti cooler.
A Yeti cooler, there you go. And then add on that renewable piece to get that full offset and get closer to that net zero status, right?
Well, there's three parts, right? You want it to turn it into sip energy, turn it into a Yeti cooler. Yep. Then you want to change the appliances, and by appliances I mean furnaces and water heaters and
all
other
those
things
mechanicals,
to sip that energy, right? So that's the HVAC piece.
Yep.
And for Kyle, he put in we weren't even hip to it yet.
Right.
He put in an air source heat pump water heater.
He did. Yeah. Hybrid heat pump water heater.
It blew my mind. It plugged in with a plug, like
that's
a
right.
regular plug.
110. Yeah.
Right. So that tells you right there that thing's not
pulling a lot of juice.
Not pulling a lot of juice. And then we did an attic upgrade for him. We added attic insulation.
We did, yep.
I think we did a rim joist for him.
We did, yep. Did some spray foaming out there.
He put on a really cool roof. Good for him.
Yeah, a metal standing seam, and it's white.
Yeah.
And he did the white.
Right.
Just for the purpose of the energy efficiency.
Exactly right.
The reflectivity and That was a bold move. When he was doing the white, I was like, I don't know. I wonder how that's going to look. It looks beautiful.
It does. Well, he's a smart guy. And
he
absolutely showed up with that. And I think that and it's not just it was a real deal standing seam roof, not like no offense to Menards, but not like, you roll it out. I mean, this is a real deal. Like they did it.
High quality, good thick gauge steel that was up there.
And we were spoiled because that was an S5 fasteners.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean,
no penetrations.
Yeah.
You're clamping onto those standing seams and then building up from your racking from there, which was great.
And I think this is true still. It was for a while. His electric bill has been $16 a month ever since.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That's the last update I've had. And actually, interestingly enough, Kyle circled back with us. I knew Kyle before this. We had actually done a project at his home that before he moved out to this new house where we did the 360 work. We did some upgrades for him. His wife and my wife were friends, and we kind of ran in the same circles years before that. Anyway, after we did this project for him, a year or so later, we ended up reconnecting and we're talking a little bit, talking shop, and ended up, he was so impressed with what we did, and he ended up coming to work for us and being a part-time solar sales guy. And it's
because he's a firefighter, so it's a good
that's
gig.
Right, full-time firefighter.
And his passion,
And he's an evangelist for the renewable energy and energy efficiency space. He believes it. I don't think it's the money that necessarily drives him. It's the passion and the belief that this is for the best. This is for a better future for our kids and grandkids. And I think that's really powerful.
It is, and that's what bottom line. I mean, there's the solar industry especially takes lots of black eyes, and deservedly so. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened that have been problematic. That's the nice way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wouldn't still be here, and I don't think you would be either.
Right.
If we didn't believe.
100%.
It's not just believe. It's been proven. I mean, it's not.
Well, I've got it on my house too.
There we go. Yeah, and I hope to have it on mine soon enough.
Yeah, 100%.
The only reason I don't already is because we have big old maple trees that my wife will not part with, and I don't blame her.
Understood. I get that.
But soon enough, we shall.
Yeah. You talk about the black eye in the solar industry. We've talked about this a little bit. There's been an article recently released.
Time Magazine.
Yeah. I mean, let's chat a little bit about that. I mean, what are the things that are happening in the industry based on that article and the things that you see that are causing this, mistrust and the fraud and the abuse within, the industry? What's happening there?
Well, I'm a fan of it, but it's capitalism.
Yeah.
I mean, there's huge incentives. There's this, desire to be part of a green movement, which is, I think, is commendable and is awesome. And what we must do.
Absolutely.
But then you get Wall Street involved. You're not going to hear me bash Wall Street too much, and I could, but that's the forces of capitalism. People amping up, wanting to be at scale. Yeah, thousands of installs a year, and then things can go sideways.
Yeah, biting off more than they can chew, and they're collecting the deposits and getting behind, and then they're starting to shuffle that money around. And I was talking to another guy in our group today. And I said, I don't think these companies start off with bad intentions, right? They're trying to do the thing. They're trying to blow up their business, probably not maybe as focused or caring about, the overall good in it, but they're chasing the dollar, full capitalism, which is fine. That's their thing. But they get on the wrong side of it, and then they start shuffling those deposits around, taking people's money, knowing that they're on a sinking ship.
Yes.
And that becomes very, very dangerous for everybody in that organization, and then all the customers that end up working with them too.
Right. And then, and I believe that in most cases, because do you remember when we went to Salt Lake for the...
Yeah, I do.
And remember, I would argue that most everybody that we've met in the solar industry, they're good people.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I would argue even that on those sinking ships, and we've known a couple people who've done that.
Yep.
They gave the good fight. They tried, but they got behind in that model that you just described.
Absolutely.
And at some point it was just not recoverable.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy about the way we've chosen to approach
100%.
the solar.
Yeah.
We don't...
Very deliberate,
very,
right?
well, I would say quite deliberate.
Yeah.
I mean...
As best we could. I mean, we definitely didn't jump right in and say, let's go sell, and then we'll figure out how to do this.
No.
You talk about Kyle's job. I mean, that was our first project and our only project for 3-4 months, 5 months, 6 months, as we're spinning up and we're sending our guys through NABCEP, getting them trained and certified.
Fortunately, we had the other portion of the business to help to keep working on.
Yep. The energy efficiency and the installation and energy auditing side of it. And that's been really a key piece, I think, for us at Greenlink, where we're not totally relying. We've said it many times, right? Thank God we don't have to rely solely on the solar, because that changes the mindset and the dynamic. And it's all about how many panels can I get on this roof? It doesn't matter. They've got a big maple tree over the roof. That's fine. Let's throw 20 panels on there. Whereas with the approach that we're taking, we don't look at it that way.
No,
we say, how can we do the best job for this customer? Maybe it doesn't have anything to do with solar. At your house, we looked at the energy efficiency upgrades, at the mechanicals, at the heat pump.
Yeah,
that was the way to go there.
All of it. Yeah, I'm so thankful that, we're pursuing the big idea of 360. I don't know if you call it 120, 120, 120, but 360, right?
Yeah.
And again, for those 7 or 8 of you that are listening, that's envelope, mechanical, HVAC, and then renewable in solar. I believe it's the way to, at least for us, it's the way to go, to take all of those pieces and put them together and make sure that they each make sense for our customers.
Yeah.
Because that's what we got to do. I mean, net zero is for real. If you want it and can get to the sunlight and can invest, you can be net zero.
Yeah.
That's for real and live comfortably.
100%. Well, you say, that 360, you believe it's the way for us to serve our customers. But I'd also say for other contractors and other folks in the industry, I believe that that's the future. You'll start to see less and less of these just siloed solar companies. And eventually they're going to be forced, and they should just adopt this sooner than later, in my opinion, start to look at this in a comprehensive way and in a holistic approach, the same way that we are. We have a unique business model, and there's very few companies that I'm aware of that take that full comprehensive approach. But as I hear other podcasts and go to different seminars, that chatter is starting to increase, and people are starting to become more and more aware that, just selling the solar and not worrying about how that energy is being used, that's starting to change. And I think that'll change more and more over time. It just has to. Otherwise customers are left to piece it together on their own, which is something we've talked about a lot. You said, you hired Metro, and then you're going to call your HVAC guy, and then you're going to try to find a solar guy. Whereas you can start with a company that can do that full energy audit, tell you all the things about your home, everything that's going on there, and then you can just start to assess it and see what's going to make the most sense.
Right, and then there's the regulatory side or the incentive side, which is super deep. I mean, good luck.
Very complicated.
Very complicated. That's why we have in-house counsel who looks at all of that, because just a big piece. And so, I would argue that, like MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, have over time learned how to coexist and work with one another. Similarly, that will happen with our industry. Yeah, because general contractors are always worried about insulation and always had to worry about those trades. But if you're going to get to something that looks like net zero, it does not happen by accident. You have to be very deliberate about it, and you have to make sure there's a high level of coordination. So yes, I agree with you. It's a specialty, but I also think that there's also room for, not unlike MEP, for people to understand and to understand more about how the systems work together.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. We've talked a lot about it recently, about the trade or the industry that we're in and the lack of maybe pathways and public knowledge about this industry. And with the Inflation Reduction Act and everything that's going on, we've discussed it, that's something that has to be built and leaned into a bit and become more, common knowledge to the general public. Kids that are coming out of high school, maybe looking at different trades. We've talked about building envelope technicians, right?
Yep, the BETs, absolutely.
BETs, and thus far we bring in guys and we start to train them. And there's Building Performance Institute and a number of different certification sources. But that's going to give the guys on the book side, but there's not this hands-on training side. And so a lot of companies are left to train in-house. And, that's one of the things that we're working on and exploring. How can we build better systems and better procedures to train our guys and get them to that level to help? You gave me a statistic, a couple months ago when we talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and what that equates to for the number of technicians and the number of houses and what that dollar amount looks like. Do you remember some of those numbers?
I remember some of them roughly, but maybe in another podcast we can get really into the actual numbers because they are staggering. They are World War II level numbers. What I mean by that is that the GDP for America has is somewhere in the area relative to national debt at 140% at the end of World War II. Okay. So there's so much debt to fund the war. I believe that to master climate change and to get everybody to net zero businesses and buildings, we're going to have to do a similar thing. Yeah. And the only way that that's going to happen is if we, and I'd like Greenlink to be a huge part of this, especially in the Midwest, for sure, is to change this idea. Everybody knows what a plumber is or an HVAC guy or, any other trades person. Yeah. But I believe, and the little we, Greenlink, and the big we need to evangelize, we used that word earlier, the idea of a BET or some other name, a building envelope technician. Right. Because at literally every single home and business in this country, mostly old, but the new ones as well, need to be changed into Yeti coolers. That's right. And we need to evangelize and make the world aware of this trade, just like a plumber, just like an HVAC tech. What do? I'm a BET. I'm a building envelope technician. Right. I make buildings into Yeti coolers. Yeah. And the staggering number of people that need to be trained and hired to do that it's unbelievable. It's going to take a huge amount of money. Yeah. And commitment, which the IRA has already started to do.
100%.
And that's where I think we and many others need to be, and I expect us to be leaders in that area. But I hope that over the next 2, 3, 4 years, it starts to change and become another segment of the workforce. I'm a BET. You talk, cool. And people know what that means.
Right. As you say, that's an important distinction because people are thinking, well, there's lots of insulators out there, right? That is not a building envelope technician. No. I mean, that is one of the facets of understanding how to create and improve a building envelope, but stuffing fiberglass into the wall like we've been doing for 30, 40 years.
Yeah, a long time. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know when I don't even know when they started using fiberglass because at some point it was newspaper and it was empty and then it was fiberglass.
There have been forms of insulation around for 100 years, I would imagine. Of course, for a long time. I remember I used to renovate a lot of buildings in this neighborhood pretty much. Yeah. And we would encounter regularly old insulation. Sure. It is night and day.
Night and day, yeah.
Between then and now.
You're looking at the airflows and the pressure planes throughout the building and running blower doors and manometers to understand where we're pushing, where we're pulling, getting those air sealing accounted for. There's some awesome products. What's that, aero barrier? Where you're actually blowing this
Is it aero barrier or aero seal?
Aero seal, I think, is the duct sealing.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Aero barrier, I think, is the whole home, and this is a new construction product. Yeah, but it's just
you can do it. If you're doing a big remodel, you can do it, but you got it. Okay. It's a lot of prep. You can't just walk in a new house. House where you're living and just do it now.
Because you're pressurizing the house, and you're pumping a gas into the air. And as soon as it goes to escape, at some point it starts to liquefy and solidify and plugs up all the different penetrations through the house.
Any holes the size of a quarter or less
Up to a quarter?
Up to a quarter.
That's incredible.
It is incredible.
That's hard to imagine how that works, actually. But they've been around for a long time. I remember even when I first started Greenlink, I've seen their name and their products around, and there's a couple contractors around that actually offer that in our area. AeroSeal, the duck side. I don't think anybody's doing it on the house side.
Well, people are doing it in our area.
Yeah,
people are certainly doing it.
For sure. Yeah.
But go ahead.
I was going to say, there's something interesting that's kind of right in this vein. I was having a conversation the other night and learned, this was news to me actually. So Illinois just integrated and spun up the 2021 Illinois Energy Code. And in that code, we are now required to have R30 in the exterior wall assemblies. It has to be a total of R30, or you're going to love this, R20 continuous insulation on the exterior.
Yeah,
you've been talking about that for several years now. Yep. And that's what I was saying too. I think that R20, and that's why they dropped that R value down. Right. Said, hey, if you do it the way that we're really wanting you to do it, we'll decrease the R value. But otherwise, I mean, with R30 and the exterior walls, I mean, you can't get that, definitely not out of a 2x4. Even with closed cell spray foam, 7.4 per inch. So I think you're...
No, you just, you'd have to do like a zip, on top, which you'd want to do anyways in a 2x4.
That's the way it should be done. I mean, I think that in that one of the more ideal assemblies, and there's all kinds of different schools of thought on this, but a continuous exterior insulation, like a zip system, R5 or R10, I think that's a sweet spot, R10, but whatever works for folks. And then spray foam a few inches into that wall, 3 inches, R21 on the inside, R10 on the outside. That is premium. And we did that on Chima's out there in Crystal Lake. It's a beautiful system. The air changes in the house are below 1. And so she's got an ERV system in there where she's bringing in fresh air, ventilation. And that's part of that building envelope technician right there, too.
Right. You can't, it's not just some dude with a truck and some rolls of insulation. It's night and day.
Well, it's not even just a dude in a truck with a spray foam rig either. I mean, it's this whole system. It's all got to be accounted for. And the building science, diagnostic equipment, and those principles all coming together.
And
100%. And then how that now those air changes per hour and the tightness of that home and those R values of the wall assemblies start to impact the BTUs and the heating and cooling loads on the house. You talked about Matt Reisinger. What's that? You told me the example of the one in Alaska. I think it was in Alaska or something. Tell us a little bit about that.
So, okay, before I tell you that, what would you estimate the average BTU of a residential furnace is in our area?
In our area?
Yeah.
80,000?
80,000, right? Yeah. Okay. So this is in Canada. Now it's in BC, so it's Western, which is a little bit milder, but it's still Canada.
It's Canada,
I think enough said, it's Canada. This house is so well insulated that the manual J, the equivalent of the manual J came back for 5,000 square feet. And that 80,000 square foot unit is probably 1,500 to 2,000 at most.
A third of the size of this 5,000 square foot home.
They're doing, the manual J came back at 10 to 15,000 BTUs needed of heat.
Blows my mind.
And let's remember now, we've just been through a heating season. With how many, we put in 20 plus air source heat pumps,
that's right.
Furnaces. And we were a little...
we're definitely interested to see how that was going to play out.
Yeah, a little lower.
We were on standby.
I'll speak for myself. I was a little nervous.
For sure.
And damn it, if they didn't perform unbelievably well, both Bosch and Mitsubishi. Everyone knows Mitsubishi is the Cadillac or even Rolls Royce of the industry, but Bosch did well too. Wow.
Yeah, when that day, it was on a Sunday, and I was making calls to customers. I talked to you that day as well, and was seeing how everybody's homes were holding up because it was negative 14, negative 20 outside, whatever it was, real temp. And to hear,
it hit it for a minute. It wasn't like 3 days of that. But
Well, it was a cold stretch. I mean, we were below zero for several days, right?
For sure. I'm trying to minimize it, but
But calling and talking to people and seeing how they were playing out. I mean, I talked to one customer who's involved in the mechanical world, and he actually turned off his resistance heat on purpose to see how that heat pump would do. He just wanted to test the limits. And he was holding his house at 71 degrees, satisfying the thermostat, and performed beautifully. And I never would have believed that to be possible if I didn't experience it for myself.
Right. And you
experienced the same thing,
mine never came on.
Your resistance heat never came on. Not necessarily on purpose, but that's the way it was.
But it worked. And for those of you who are listening who don't fully understand what's happening, the air source heat pumps produce heat, and they produce tons of it, when it's 30 degrees outside or 10, but as it starts to approach well below zero, it becomes tougher and tougher for them to produce heat because of the change in the outside temperature. So there is what's called resistance heat, which is electric heat. So you're using that electric power to create heat, which
like
is
a baseboard heater, right?
Which is very inefficient. Now, in our climate, that should only need to be used 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year. So it's okay, to do that. But we just went through one of the coldest spells we've had in many years, and none of them even needed.
Yeah.
That's because the technology is so good,
right?
And that, and getting better all the time. So that's just a wonderful outlook.
Well, that technology's been around for a long time. Heat pumps have been down south, and there were certain climate zones where it made sense.
Did a lot of it. Yeah.
Northeast did? Okay. But it's always been, in climate zone 5 and climate zone 6, people are like, no, heat pumps aren't for us. Well, I think that's definitely changed, and heat pumps are for, all of the climate zones in North America, I would say, for sure.
Yeah, they're for me.
Yeah.
We're
the very top of climate zone 5.
Right, yeah.
Lower edge of climate zone 6 in the Wisconsin and Illinois border. Yeah, that's pretty cool stuff. So then you look at that. So we're talking about the building envelope. You're getting that tight. Then you talk about the mechanical side. You're getting that buttoned up, and then you move into the solar piece. And instead of maybe needing a system where your house would have needed maybe 35 or 40 panels previously, now you're down to this more efficient operating home, and maybe you only need 20 panels to get that offset that you would.
Unless you're using an air source heat pump, because just for those my house, I have no more gas. There is no gas.
Yeah, you're fully electrified.
Fully electric.
Yeah.
Okay? So now I have to find the energy to heat the house that I used to use gas for.
Right.
So maybe that wouldn't reduce.
That's true. Yeah, you're right.
That,
yeah, so in a home that has a dual fuel,
right,
a gas and a heat pump. This is my preferred pathway where you've got a dual fuel situation. So you've got a heat pump on those 30, 20, 10 degree days. But once it starts to get to that point where that heat pump's really struggling or it's working hard to get it, you just switch over to the gas.
It does it automatically. You don't have to worry about it.
Automatically swaps over to the furnace. That heat pump's sitting right on top of it. Swaps over to the furnace, and you start to heat your house with gas, and the electric's out. Well, obviously, I guess you couldn't run your blower on your gas, but you would at least have the fuel for your gas furnace.
Yeah, right. The blower still works, but you're not using the air source heat pump to find heat anymore.
Yeah.
And again, these are pretty brief stints. I don't know. I get that, but I really like the idea of being
fully electric.
Fully
Are you
electric.
liking that?
Yeah. I like it, and I like it a lot. And different people have different reasons to maybe go all electric. I'm not an off-grid kind of person where I think I'm worried that, we're never going to have, and I need like some sort of prepper, or whatever.
Some of our best customers, by the way.
Good for them. Yep. Wonderful. God love them. But I am much more interested in the idea of net zero, to do the right thing, to truly live, off,
reduce the carbon footprint.
Totally. And, if you look at the kind of time scales that are, longer, certainly in line with the life of the house, these investments, there's an immediate ROI.
Yeah.
If you say, okay, this is going to benefit me for decades, and they truly will.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And especially if you're fortunate enough to live in Illinois, where you get lots of incentives on top of the federal incentives. What a wonderful thing to do. It's truly a win-win-win.
Yeah.
The only downside that I see from 360 through electrification, could be dual fuel, fine as well, because you use so little of it, is it's a slightly different kind of feel after living through a winter with an air source heat pump. They just don't burn. They burn longer, but not as hot.
They're running almost constantly.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
And then, with a 100,000 BTU furnace, the house drops a few degrees, and that thermostat says, okay, let's fire her up.
Yeah.
You pick up and bring that temp up pretty quick.
Right.
Whereas with the heat pump, the goal is you don't want to be dropping 3, 4, 5 degrees. You want to be just consistently sitting at that 70 degrees.
Right.
Did we put a humidifier out at your house?
No, we took one out. We didn't.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay.
and I'd like to.
I wonder if that's part of that feel, maybe. That you feel. It's a little bit drier in the house. Or?
I don't think that the humidifier was working before. So
most humidifiers don't. Yeah.
Right. So I guess the thing is that, when that kicks on, it doesn't come blazing out with 120 degree or 130 degree air. It's coming out with, we're looking for 71, and it's coming out with, 85 degree air.
Sure.
But it's just moving that all the time.
Yeah.
So that's very minor.
Is it comfortable? It's just different?
It's comfortable. Yeah. Still comfortable, but it's a bit different.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Because again, I think it's just that, like, you get that cold shock.
Right.
and then all of a sudden 120 degrees
yeah,
come at it.
Right. So, instantly warm you back up. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. How about on the cooling side? You had that through the summer as well, and the heat pump, for those that don't know, you're using for your heating and your cooling.
Right.
And it's a staged compressor and variable speed blower, and it's got all the bells and whistles to ramp up and down. How did that feel in your house on the cooling side?
Wonderful. I mean, there's no penalty there, right? Because it's the same technology basically, but you're able to run
better than a single stage, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it was way better than what we had there. I mean, first of all, that Mitsubishi exterior compressor is just gorgeous. I love that thing. I'd be standing outside looking at it and smiling like the weirdo that I can be, sometimes. But it was really cool, and it is whisper. I mean, you have to be standing there. You're watching the blades turn, and you're like, "Is it even on?" But it is, and it just, we came home from vacation, and the guys were putting the stuff in while we're gone, and just we got home, we turned it on, and it just cooled the whole house down in 10 minutes.
Really?
So yeah,
start dropping the temp that quick.
Dropping the temp. So right away.
Well, that makes sense too. I don't know if you know why that is, but when we size these heat pumps, I think we put a 42K into your house, 42,000 BTU heat pump. Sure, which is one of the larger, if not the largest residential one that Mitsubishi makes. And so, but we're sizing that for the heating load because your house is calling for 50,000 BTUs of heat or whatever it was. But on the cooling load for your home, you only needed 20,000 BTUs or 25,000 BTUs.
Right.
But we needed to again size it for the heating side.
Right.
But again, with these compressors, instead of being a single stage compressor, which is
off.
Which is what they've been for years, and then you've got 2-stage compressors. Now you've got modulating variable compressors where they're throttling up and down through all kinds of different modes and sequences to cool the home. And same thing, you want that runtime on your cooling. A lot of people don't realize that. You turn on your air conditioner, like my air conditioning is great. It only turns on and it runs for 5 minutes, and my house is cool. That's great that you can drop the temperature, but you want that air conditioner to run and to run and to run because that's where it's dehumidifying the house. Right. Some people get into a cycle where they're dropping the temperature in their house. As they drop the temperature, they're still feeling that moisture, so they drop the temperature again, again. Well, now they're starting to affect the relative humidity. The same amount of moisture that's in the air, it's relative. So the warmer the air is, the more moisture the air can hold. The cooler, the less. And that affects the relative humidity. So it can create a vicious cycle as people are chasing that with their thermostat. That's why basements tend to be a little bit more damp in a house. So yeah, the cooling side is amazing for sure.
No, it's great. I'm so thrilled that the Mitsubishi products are just fantastic.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bummed out. I put in that Carrier Infinity in my house. And I think the guy is before we got into HAC and we were just starting to dabble and explore things, and the technology was coming out. And he's like, "Well, do you want a heat pump?" I'm like, "No, I don't want any of that." And so I got an ultra efficient gas furnace. Yeah. And it's got a variable blower and it's got a 5-stage compressor on the cooling side. But I'm a little regretful now. I wish I would have got the dual fuel at the least. And so Mitsubishi's actually come up with a product for that, the IntelliHeat system.
Unbelievable.
And I would lose that brand new compressor I bought and the A coil, but I could keep that furnace.
You should describe that better to the folks listening, to the masses out there.
Yeah, the masses, so what this is, you look at your HVAC system, there's kind of 3 main components. You've got your furnace and your air handler. You've got your A coil, which is the box that sits on top of that where the copper line set runs to.
Where the cooling happens.
Yeah, where the cooling's happening. And then you've got the outside condensing unit, which is, typically the air conditioner. Well, on the Mitsubishi IntelliHeat, what you're doing is you're eliminating that outdoor condenser and the A coil. You're swapping that out for a heat pump system. So to you as a home, for a homeowner, it's going to look essentially the same. You got a condensing unit, you got an A coil, but that system can actually plug and play with any furnace that's out there, communicate with that furnace, and you can run that heat pump again, 30 degrees, 20 degrees, whatever you want to program it for, and say, okay, when I hit this outdoor temperature, swap over and give me my gas furnace back, and that thing can throttle up and down. So you get kind of the best of both worlds without having to replace everything. Right. Now, if you have an older furnace and an older AC, just do the whole thing, obviously.
Right. But you're basically describing a dual fuel system, right? Because
that's definitely that is a dual fuel,
right? Yeah. Because you're taking the one element not mentioned was the heat exchanger that exists in every furnace. Yep. You're leaving that. You're leaving the old box.
That's right. Yep.
You're taking off the A coil, which is shaped like an A. That's right. And you're replacing it with an M coil, and then that air source heat pump M coil is doing everything you let it.
Yep.
And then when you need that extra push,
yep.
you go back to your old furnace.
That's right.
That had a heat exchanger in it.
Yep.
And it gives you that dual fuel in this case situation.
Yeah.
Is that not right?
That's 100%. And so for a homeowner, they wouldn't even notice the difference. Just visually and cosmetically, and you're looking at this, there is no difference. It's the
until
same
they went outside
thing.
and looked at their condenser because they're so gorgeous.
They see that beautiful Mitsubishi condenser out there for sure. Mitsubishi should be sponsoring us here on our show with all our listeners. But yeah, so that's pretty cool stuff. So yeah, we're definitely jazzed about all the different HVAC things. Yeah. This is going to be our first full year in HVAC, right? Last year, I think 9 months or so of HVAC that we were doing with the electrification program that we were running.
Systems, yeah.
Yep. And now we're in a number of additional programs this year. We got the multifamily heat pump program, multifamily electrification, single family electrification, all the different things that are going on. And we're also offering this to our residential customers as well on the retail side. We're not looking to be a volume HVAC contractor and say, hey, we want to go throw in heat pumps out there and do 20 of them a day. We want to be very deliberate, same way we do with solar, right?
Yep.
We want to be very deliberate, very thoughtful about how we're doing this, size that equipment right. In fact, I would tell somebody if they called and said, hey, I want a heat pump, cool, we'll come out, we'll take a look, we'll send out an energy advisor, and we'll assess the situation. But if their attic has no insulation in it or very low insulation and the rim joist isn't spray foamed, I would really probably try to talk them out of that and say, hey, why don't we start with the building envelope first? That is always the first step.
Right.
You've got to get that right.
And it's passive. There's nothing to break or replace or any of that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Once it's done, theoretically, it's done. Right. And so once you get that building envelope tightened up and dialed in where you want it to be, then you start to look at that heat pump. Because if you go the wrong direction, I mean, you're oversizing the equipment or you're undersizing or whatever the case is. So there's a sequence that should be considered as you work through this. Now, somebody said, my building envelope's fine. It's on the border of should I do anything? Should I not? I want to look at a dual fuel system. I think that's a different story. Yeah. But if you're going to go full electric, full heat pump, you've got to have that building envelope dialed in and buttoned up.
Right, because you're going to regret it if we do 100%. Get a really that's and I need to put an asterisk by what I said earlier about the only drawback being with the air source heat pump is the what do you call it, the lower constant temperature versus the higher as needed temperature, and that is the cost. Currently, air source heat pumps are considerably more expensive than a swap out. If you just swap out a furnace, and then we see ads $2,200. You can you're closer to 10 times that when you do the air source heat pump. That is a thing.
Now, if you compare that air source heat pump to the higher ultra efficient, like my Carrier system, I don't remember exactly, but it's 12, 13, something like that.
You're getting there.
And with one of these decked out Mitsubishi systems, you're probably closer to 20 on the retail side. Now, this is pre-incentives, right? With the Inflation Reduction Act, I'm quite sure, depending on your income level, they're getting ready to be rolling this out formally here, but up to $6,000, I think, off when you convert to a heat pump.
Okay.
And then depending on your income bracket, and then there's another level where it's maybe $3,000. We got to dig into that more as it becomes available. Right now, it's not on the table.
Right. The IRA is not hit in that way.
Many aspects of it have a hit. Yeah. But it is coming. In fact, AJ was on today with the homes rebate program, which is a big element of it within the energy efficiency side, and it might even cover into the heat pump. So that's on the way for sure. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about your house, Chandler. I know you've got you bought a piece of property. You got 5 acres. You've got some designs underway. You haven't obviously started construction.
No.
But you've been really focusing and working through some of the designs for the last little bit. Talk a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what you're planning on doing out there. It's gonna be pretty cool.
Well, okay. Number one, my baby wants a pool. That's my wife. Okay, she gonna get it. We're gonna build that, and that's exciting too. Yeah. So,
there's some things about that pool though.
We're gonna get into it all.
Yeah, I don't want to miss that.
I just want to make sure that's up front.
Yeah. There you go.
We thought about putting a pool at our house. We'd have to cut down one of those maples, which that's not happening.
Not on the
anyway.
table.
So I talked to Austin years ago, and I said, hey, why don't we build?
Yeah,
because we've been good collaborators.
Yep.
Why don't we build a Greenlink model home?
Yeah,
let's put all of this into practice, and let's show everybody. First of all, physically something beautiful with all the air source heat pumps and continuous insulation and all the things, yada yada.
Yep.
Bring it all together. Also in a stunning modern home. So we bought 5 acres, and it's a modern design. When we bought the land, which we like very much, we bought it from a couple who they were going to build their dream house on it. And they finally said, and they live like 3 blocks down the road. And they finally said, no, we're of an age now and the kids are gone. Yeah. And so we're going to sell that. So fortunately for us, we were able to acquire that. And, I'm hoping to maybe break ground in 2025. That would be great.
Yeah.
Interest rates are a big deal.
Right. That changes everything.
For sure. For years and years and years and years, we had 2 and 3. In fact, our current mortgage, is
mine as well.
Yeah, is 2 and some change, right? 2 and change, something like that. And we don't owe that much on it. So then we would turn around and build an amazing house. We'd owe quite a bit more,
right,
at a 2 or 3 times the interest rate.
Yeah.
So we're going to pick our moment.
Sure.
I work in the financial side of things, and most of the chatter is that interest rates will be coming down.
That's
6
what I've been
months
hearing.
or so.
Yeah. I heard the same
who
thing
knows?
yesterday from somebody.
If that's a great prediction, and I hope it's true. But I look forward to, and I built many structures in my life. Built some things I'm very proud of. Some things that didn't go so well, but a lot of things that were really cool and really proud of. And I'm hoping to build our masterpiece. And when I say our, I mean for my family, my wife and myself and our kids, but also for Greenlink, with your collaboration and all of the smart people. Seriously, how fortunate are we to have all of these really smart, who work for Greenlink, but many of them don't.
Internal and external, right?
Exactly right.
Yeah.
To show that, and then maybe I will be net zero and off grid. Yeah. Not because I'm worried about the apocalypse, but if I would be so close at that point.
Yeah, you're gonna be right
I would
there.
need very little. I would need very little, power because it's so well built.
Yep.
And well and septic because it's a little bit out in the country, so I'm off grid anyway. We don't need gas. So I'm really looking forward to that. And maybe before we end this session day, we should talk about our buddy, what's his name, Paul in Indiana. We should talk about his
Larry Ponziano.
Yeah, Larry.
Is that right?
Yeah, we should maybe finish with that because that's a great case study.
It is.
In my house.
Yep.
It will look aesthetically different, and it'll have a pool. And just for those who want to ask me about this later, all of you out there clamoring for this information, we're going to do a reverse ICF foundation and selective architectural parts of the house so that it'll look like concrete above grade in sections.
For the exterior walls, right?
For the exterior walls, for that modern look, but it'll be as insulated as anything else.
Right.
Because it's got a sandwich. It's a sandwich of concrete, foam, rigid foam insulation, and concrete.
Right.
So it looks like something that's really cool, but it performs just how us geeks at Greenlink want to perform.
Yeah. And you're doing continuous insulation, at least on the last rendering I saw, wrapping around the roof, right?
Everything,
all the way
take
over.
it up. So
it's totally going to be wrapped.
Yeah, totally. I mean, this thing will. I'm looking for an ACH 50 of below 1.
Yeah.
Below 0.5. I think is what we're shooting for. Like,
that makes sense.
I think the passive house standard is 3 or something like that.
0.3. Yeah, that's right.
So I mean, somewhere between 3 and 5.
Right.
And again, those J calcs, the manual J's, excuse me. They're still historically on that house, much smaller than 5,000 square feet, what we're building, but might only need 10,000 BTUs.
Yeah. Are you still leaning into the Zender system for that too?
100%.
Yeah, you're locked in on that. Well, some ductless systems coupled with the Zender.
Let's talk about that because that's
a pretty cool technology. I think you're the one that found them, right? I mean, is Zender is a company that makes an ERV system,
a Swiss or German, I forget.
Yeah. And you had connected with this guy, Larry Ponziano, I believe is his name.
Wacky as us.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And he's a character. He's deep into this stuff too. And we drove out to his house. He welcomed us out there, invited us out in Indiana. And I think he had, maybe 1 ton of heating and cooling with a couple heads throughout the house. And then he had this Zender system. He also had some geothermal, I think, looped into that, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but
Up in the attic when he was showing us the unit, there was definitely some geothermal. I'm almost positive of that. But this Zender system is a standalone. It's 2-inch tubes, basically.
2 to 3 inches.
They're running throughout the house into all the different rooms.
They're just so people know they're flexible and they're rubber and they're heavy.
Very heavy.
So sound doesn't, and they're
That's
small,
right.
so sound doesn't travel through them. It's like octopus arms going everywhere.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, it's a completely quiet system. Yeah. There's no noise at all. Very little anyway. And this Zender system, the part that fascinated me the most, when you think about a ductless system, you got a cassette on the east side of the house and a cassette on the west side of the house. It's like, okay, what about everything in between and all the different rooms? Well, with this Zender system, it's constantly running 30 CFM or 40 CFM, whatever he's got it dialed in at, and he's pulling that air through returns and then bringing it back through. And he's
Zender returns, not in the conventional sense.
Yeah, there's no duct work in the the traditional duct
work. 2
work.
cassette heads.
That's right. Yeah. And they're pulling this air back through the returns. He was purifying it and filtering it and doing all the things.
You have to do because his house is so tight. You can't.
That's right.
You have to do it.
Yeah. And I think actually remember when he took us over by his TV and he's like, rubbed his hand across the top of the TV. He's like, no dust at all.
Right.
And that's in most houses, you're not going to get away with that. You know, you're going to have a fingers full of dust there. But so he's filtering that air, bringing it back through the supplies, and it's redistributing it through the house. And so the Zender system is the distribution for those cassettes.
Right. In addition to the ERV.
In addition, that's right. Well, the Zender is the ERV, right?
Right. Yeah. So, but it's also the distribution.
That's right, yeah.
And do you remember what he told us that thing ran for? The cost for operation was for that for the year?
I do not.
$20.
$20?
Not a month, a year.
For the Zender side.
For the Zender, because it's so German
they
and
got
crazy.
DC motors and all the things going on there.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, he had a lot going on. He had R100 in the attic.
R130 in the attic.
R130?
Yeah,
okay.
a 60 in the walls. I mean, you might be remembering better than me, but I remember R130, and we were like, what?
Yeah.
That's can't be.
He would be a great guy to have on here and have a chat with.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he'd have a lot to say. That was very impressive. And he had solar out there too, I believe, right? On the back side of that roof.
And he did slab on grade because that's the most efficient way to go. Yep. I'm not doing slab on grade. I want a basement.
Have a basement,
yeah, for sure. But it's okay. I'm going to take the penalty.
For sure. Well, we'll spray foam the outside of those of your foundation walls and spray foam the floor before you pour your slab on there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's going to perform great.
Yeah, the 5, 10, 20, 40, 60 model.
Okay.
Something like that. 5 is the windows. I have an R value, even though it's a U factor, but it's R value is 5.
U factor equates to R value in some way.
Direct relationship. I always, even though I'm a math guy, I always struggle with that math. So 10 in the slab. So R10 in the slab. R20 in the below grade walls.
Okay.
R40 in the above grade walls. Yeah. And R60 in the attic. But not only that, but then an ACH 50 of less than
0.3.
Yeah, 0.3 or somewhere in there. You do that. The thing, I mean, people joke. It heats on a candle and cools on an ice cube. I mean, it's waste. And remember, when we went to Larry's house, do you remember what the temperature was outside?
It was hot.
It was over 100 degrees.
Okay, yeah.
And that thing was stable and comfortable.
So comfortable in there.
Ridiculous.
You could feel the environment was just different in there. Right. Not because it wasn't 100 degrees, but also the moisture control and the freshness of the air, all those things.
All the things. And he had what do you call it? A septic system. He had a well. He had solar energy, and he had no gas because he was all electric.
Oh, was he all electric too? Oh, wow.
So when we were there, he was 39 months into living there. He had zero electric bill, zero water bill, zero sewer bill, and zero gas bill because he had no gas the whole time he lived there.
Yeah, that is incredible.
So you extend that over the life of a structure.
What kind of ROI is that? Or payback and positive cash flow that you're generating on that. So you have that higher upfront cost, but all the different impacts outside of financially, we're talking about the comfort, the longevity, the environmental impacts, all these different things.
But you're also not ducting everywhere.
Right.
You're also putting in an unbelievable filter system. Like you got asthma or allergies. I mean, it's night and day.
That was hospital grade type air quality in there. And I believe he said that to us actually.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So and I mean, really, 2 cassettes?
Yeah.
What's to go wrong? I mean, in 20 years, 25 years, you switch out a cassette?
Very, very little moving parts in comparison to some bigger systems with all the different things they might have going on.
You got a McMansion? Yeah. You're running big old...
Yeah, 2 systems, one in the attic and one out in the basement. Yes. One room is, 5 degrees warmer or cooler than the other, or 10. We see that often, that big temperature delta between different rooms.
Brysinger has a builder that's on his show. He builds out of Kansas, I think, and they do a weird thing where they do the entire envelope and they design the home so there's no interior posts or anything. Okay. And they drywall the whole shell.
That's right.
Because it's an additional...
So the air sealing of the attic floor and the problems that we're always retrofitting. Yes. That's not an issue in these homes.
One beautifully contiguous situation. And he brought out his laser and a couple of cassettes and a Zender. Yeah. And he's like... All
consistent.
So at the tippy top, it's like 73 degrees. Yeah. And at the bottom, it's like 71.
Wow.
I mean, it's just so unbelievably stable. Yeah. Like I don't think those tolerances would bother anybody.
Yeah, I mean, someday we'll see what the future holds in store for us. But someday, I mean, I'd love to continue to dig deeper and explore. Obviously, with your house, we're going to do that,
and our facility. Someday,
For sure.
Yeah. I imagine a reverse ICF for our facility because now you're done. You don't need to side it.
Yep.
regular ICF, you gotta come up with an exterior siding, and on the inside, you unless you want to live with styrofoam, you got to do that.
Yeah.
So I look forward to not just my house, but for that as well. I mean, I hope we build a facility, soon enough where we're that really meets our needs, and that also is
performs in line with what we would expect.
Yeah.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, it was great, man. I appreciate the conversation today. This was good, and this really honestly could open up and segue into all kinds of different directions. You know, with all the different topics that we dug into, but at a high level, really cool stuff. Really exciting. Appreciate everybody for joining, listening in today. We'll hope to see you on the next one.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chandler.
Thank you.